Hello, everybody. Welcome to another segment of Jones Grammar. This segment is called Parts of the Sentence. Now, parts of the sentence is in some ways complementary to our previous presentation on parts of speech. But this is where we're dealing with a different dimension of grammar than we are dealing with parts of speech. Let's just see if we can recall what the parts of speech were. Remember, there are 8 of them. We have nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, prepositions, interjections. And then we also have those 3 little words called articles, a, an, and the, which are often grouped with adjectives. When we're talking about parts of the sentence, in contrast to the parts of speech, we're using words like subject, predicate, object, and then the different types of these things. We have simple subject and complete subject, simple predicate, complete predicate, direct object, indirect object, object of the preposition, that type of thing. So this is where we need to we need to learn to separate the different types of information and vocabulary that we use to talk about grammar. So that's one thing we want to keep in mind as we go through this. Now, you're going to get a lot of practice on parts of the sentence in the form of worksheets a little bit later on. For right now, I simply want you to get in your notes some basic definitions, and we will also have some examples. First of all, let's define sentence. What is a sentence, people? Well, a sentence is a group of words that expresses a complete thought. Every sentence has 2 parts, a subject and a predicate. If it does not have a subject, it does not express a complete thought. If it does not have a predicate, it does not express a complete thought either and is not considered a sentence. It would be considered a fragment instead. What is a subject? Well, the subject is the part of the sentence that names who or what the sentence is about, right? It includes at least one noun or pronoun. And this noun or pronoun that is within the complete subject is what we call the simple subject. Now, we'll see examples of all this in a minute, but right now, just get the definition down. Predicate, in contrast to subject. The predicate is the part of the sentence that tells something about the subject. It includes at least one verb or verb phrase, and we call the verb or verb phrase within the predicate the simple predicate. Okay, now every sentence, according to parts of the sentence theory, right, every sentence has a subject and a predicate. Moreover, every word in the sentence is going to be part of the subject or of the predicate. That's another thing to keep in mind here. You will never find a word that is not either part of the subject or part of the predicate. Now, let's get some examples going of these things. Our first very simple sentence is John cried. Well, I just told you that the subject of a sentence is the part of the sentence that the sentence is about, and the predicate is the part of the sentence that tells something about the subject. Well, there's only 2 words here, so one of the words must be the subject, one of the words must be the predicate. And sure enough, the subject of the sentence is John, John being the noun that the sentence is about, and the predicate is cried, cried being the verb that tells something about John. Let's take that 2-word sentence and let's build on it to make a sentence like, John, my little brother, cried for more than an hour. Now we've got a whole bunch of other words going on besides the noun that in the first sentence was the subject, and the verb cried that in the first sentence was the verb. We've got a lot more going on. And we would say now that the subject of the sentence is John, my little brother. And the simple subject is John, right? We could write the complete subject of the sentence is John, my little brother, and the simple subject is John. Sometimes we just leave off the word complete, though, when we're talking about the complete subject. And the predicate here is cried for more than an hour. So you see the predicate is more than just the verb. It's the verb plus any other words that are going along with the verb, right? And this is where we distinguish between the complete predicate and the simple predicate. And the simple predicate is simply the verb cried. The complete predicate is the verb is the verb cried. In addition to these other words, for more than an hour, which you may recognize as a prepositional phrase. Now we're going on to the question of compound subjects and predicates. And if you remember from our presentation on nouns way back when, a compound noun is a noun that has more than one word. Well, similarly, a compound subject is a situation where you have two subjects going on. Same with a compound predicate. There are two verbs going on. A compound subject, for a definition here, is made up of two or more simple subjects that are conjoined by a conjunction such as and, usually and, although it could be something else. An example, John and Sally are happy. Right? So John and Sally is the compound subject because there are two simple subjects in it. A compound predicate, by contrast, we could also call it a compound verb, is made up of two or more main verbs or verb phrases. As in this sentence, John laughed and cried. All right? So this sentence, we've taken and Sally back out, so we just have a simple subject, John. But now we have a compound predicate because there are two verbs going on, laughed and cried. So that's what you need to know about compound versus simple. Then we get into the question of complements. And this complement is with an E, not with an I. Complement with an E means something that goes with something else, right? And what is a complement when we're talking about grammar? It is a word or group of words in the predicate that complete the verb's meaning, okay? There are four that you need to know about. There are direct objects, indirect objects, predicate nominatives, and predicate adjectives. Now, you can jot this down quickly if you'd like, but we will also see examples of these four types of complements in the next couple of slides. First, we have the two for the complements for action verbs, right? So, a direct object receives the action of a transitive verb. And guys, if you don't remember or if you've forgotten what an action verb is, you may want to go and review the presentation on verbs or look in your notes. And you remember that with action verbs, there are two types of action verbs. There are transitive verbs and intransitive. Transitive verbs are verbs that have a direct object, as in this sentence. Sally ate her breakfast. In this sentence, her breakfast is the direct object of ate. And then, just to review, an intransitive verb would be a sentence such as Sally cried, right, where no object is coming after cried. So intransitive verbs do not have objects. An indirect object answers the question to whom or for whom. Example, Sally gave the dog a bone. Well, if you look in this sentence, after the verb, there are actually two objects going on. There's the dog, and then there's a bone. In the sentence, the dog is the indirect object appearing between the verb gave and the direct object bone, right? Now, with just to let you know, with transitive sentences, all transitive sentences will have a direct object. However, there will not always be an indirect object, right? And that's the other rule about indirect objects, is that indirect objects only appear with direct objects. So if you see an object coming after a verb and there's only one object, you don't want to start asking yourself, is this direct object or indirect object? Because an indirect object will only be there if there is also a direct object. Right? We will talk some more and give some more examples of direct objects versus indirect objects in class. And that's what that note's all about down at the bottom. Indirect objects only appear in sentences that have direct objects, though not all sentences that have direct objects have indirect objects, right? Okay, then we go on to complements for linking verbs. And guys, don't tell me you don't remember what linking verbs are, but those are normally the verbs that verbs. The most common type of linking verb is the be verb, right? Sentences sentences either have action verbs or linking verbs, right? Anyway, a predicate nominative is a noun or pronoun that follows a linking verb and helps identify the subject. Now, predicate nominative, that's kind of a mouthful. If you prefer to say predicate noun, I'm fine with that. In any case, here's our example. Mr. Sunday is Radford's principal, all right? So what is the verb of this sentence? It's is, right? And we would not call principal an object because we only use this term object when we're referring to action verbs, right? And because principal in this sentence comes after a linking verb rather than an action verb, principal here is regarded not as an object, but as a predicate noun or predicate nominative. Okay? And just in terms of the definition, that's what is happening in the sentence, is the two words Radford's principal is identifying the subject, Mr. Sunday. And that's what a predicate nominative or a predicate noun does. It further helps identify the subject of the sentence. A predicate adjective is an adjective that follows a linking verb and describes the subject, as in this sentence. Don is tall. In this sentence, tall is the predicate adjective and describes the subject, John. So once again, that's what the predicate nominative and the predicate adjective do in sentences with linking verbs as opposed to action verbs. They help link or describe or identify the subject. Okay, now guys, that's actually all you need to know for now about parts of the sentence. Once again, we will have lots of practice with this in class with worksheets and whatnot. Now you may wonder, what is all the point of this subject and predicate stuff? It might not be as immediately obvious why it's useful to know about it as parts of speech. However, the main reason that we need to know about subjects and predicates is that without them, we can't go on and talk about the different types of sentences, namely simple sentences and compound and complex sentences. And we're also going to get very confused if we start looking at clauses. So it's very important to get this terminology down. Once again, simply to help you to be able to better analyze language, but then also to be able to construct better and more varied sentences in the future and to construct them correctly and with clarity and meaning and all of that. So once again, guys, over and out. This was Jones Grammar on parts of the sentence. Talk to you soon.